Favorite cousin Rich. Hope the day is treating y'all well whenever y'all watching this. Hope it's treating y'all well. We're getting ready to get into it. Emotional male hypermasculinity. And I think the perfect time is right now to talk about this when we have all seen the clips from Rajai Jackson. I know we've all seen it, or we've all at least heard about it. So I'm gonna give it a little second, gather my notes, and we'll get started. Emotional hypermasculinity. And this is prevalent in the Black community. This goes on a lot, you know. We don't really see it from characters like Rajai Jackson, to be honest with you. Sometimes we do, you know, in the athletes and all that, but a lot of times we really see this with the Pookies, you know, the thugs, you know, the ones who put on this big bravado that they big and bad. But a lot of it's just they're emotional and they haven't found the proper way to channel their emotions. So guess who also fits that category or fits that criteria? Rajai Jackson. He's not necessarily a Pookie, you know, he don't conduct himself as a Pookie or a thug, anything of that sort. Nah, he doesn't. He's quite intelligent, or so it seems, you know. He has some intelligence in his head, but still emotional, you know. So, hypermasculinity. Hypermasculinity is an exaggerated form of traditional masculinity characterized by aggression, dominance, and emotional suppression, and the belief that toughness defines manhood. Again, that toughness defines manhood. And the biggest part out of all that I really want to break out is emotional suppression. Again, emotional suppression. It's like you could have this big bad bravado and all that, you know, if that's you, cool. But is it covering up something? Is it covering up the emotions that you have inside that you haven't properly dealt with? That's the thing. That's the kicker. You see, as Black men, Black folks, we've been conditioned to cover up our feelings. We've been conditioned to not pay attention to our emotions. You know, they've always said, don't be emotional, suck it up. You know, don't cry, men don't cry, this, that. I get it. But what I will say is this. What I will say is that it's okay to have emotions. Again, it's okay for you to be a man and have emotions. It's perfectly okay. That's a human thing. It's a human concept, having emotions. It's human. The thing about it that I really want people to take away is not having emotions as a man, especially a Black man. It's how are you dealing with your emotions? Again, how are you dealing with your emotions? And we see from Rajai Jackson, he didn't deal with his emotions properly. That whole situation was an emotional outlash, was an emotional cry. That's the whole situation that Rajai was in, was something emotional. That was it. It was an emotional cry. You can tell, well, from what I perceived from it was all that wailing he was doing on that guy and the slam and the wailing and all that, that was not about that guy. Again, that was not about that guy. That was not. All that was internal emotions that he's been suppressing over and over and over from the years and years and years and years that he hasn't had the proper outlet to let his emotions fly. He hasn't dealt with his emotions properly. You know, he even said that people calling me a bitch and this and this and this, and people thinking he's weak, people think he's a punk, this and this and this. And that's been going on over and over and over and over and over. And then if you watching the streams with his daddy, you know, his daddy sometimes playing with him, punking him and calling him a vegan and all these type of things, and he don't like it. So if you don't have the proper outlet to turn to his father to talk about his emotions, and the world is always telling you, be a man, be a man, be a man. And on top of that, he's a fighter, he's a boxer, and he has to be tough. Do you think he really has the positive outlet for his emotions to fly, for him to let his emotions go and channel it in the proper way? Especially if you haven't been taught, you know? So that social conditioning about toughen up and, you know, don't cry and don't have emotions and you're weak if you have emotions, that don't play into our hands. That don't work well. Because every time, it never fails that a man suppresses his emotions over and over and over and over. It's like a soda bottle, and you shake it and shake it and shake it and shake it. And one time, somebody's gonna open up that bottle and boom, everything spills out. And that's the same thing with Rajai Jackson. He's been shaking over and over and over and over and over and cracks that bottle and boom, just like a Pookie in the hood. He goes through thing after thing after thing after thing after thing after thing. And if he doesn't have the proper outlet to let his emotions just, guess what happens? Boom. And it happens with a lot of black men, just not Pookies. It happens with black men too. You go over, people being disrespected, this, that, over and over and over and over and over and over and over. And what happens? It's like a soda bottle that's been shaking and shaking and shaking and shaking. And if you don't know how to properly deal with your emotions, one day somebody's going to open up that cap and you're going to go boom. And that's the same thing with Rajai Jackson. That's why I said what Psycho Stu did, and that whole thing that he did with Psycho Stu, that had, to me, maybe 10, 15, 20% of that was on Psycho Stu. Everything else was with Rajai Jackson and him not dealing with his emotions then and him not dealing with his emotions throughout this whole period that he's been on Front Street and probably for his whole life. Because we've only been knowing him like in the front scene since he's been on stream with his daddy. But we don't know what he's been dealing with. I know I've heard he lost his mother and all that. So that's another toll if you haven't dealt with that properly. I'm just saying. But 10 signs of emotional hypermasculinity. Number 1, suppressed emotions. Number 2, aggression as a default. Again, aggression as a default. He didn't go meditate. He didn't go outside, smoke a blunt. He didn't go take a walk. He didn't type out his feelings, write down his feelings about how he felt, how the situation made him feel. He didn't call a buddy and say, hey, bro, this what just happened. He didn't call his girl. He didn't go drink. He didn't do nothing. Again, he didn't do anything. The number 1 default that he had was aggression. Again, aggression. Even when guys smacked the soda can on his head, the first thing was aggression. The first thing was, yo, I'm not no woo, I'll fight you, woo, woo. That was the first thing that was on his mind, was fighting. It wasn't, let me properly deal with the situation. Even if, let me see how to properly deal with this. Was it a mistake? Now I understand, somebody smacks a beer can across your head, you're going to want to react aggressively. I understand that. But what I'm saying is, in that setting, in that environment, as soon as it happened, people's like, whoa, he's not a part of the act, da-da-da-da-da. And you still want to be aggressive. And you're not saying, oh, okay, bet, I see what happened. Oh, okay, you thought I was this. Nah, that ain't it. Woo, woo. You can still be mad, but you still aggressive. That's an issue. That's a problem. That's an issue, and that's a problem. Again, risk-taking without foresight, that's another. Sexual dominance fixation, I would say that's more so his father. And both of them, play into this. If you're watching the clips, how he talks to women and all that, I'm not saying if it's right or wrong, I'm not saying anything. But if you just view it from an outside point of view, from an observant point of view, you see this whole sexual palace that a lot of hypermasculine men carry. They feel like that's part of being a man. You have to be overly sexual when you're dealing with a female, And to me, you don't have to do that. Again, you don't have to do that. If a woman's attracted to you, she's attracted to you. It's ways to be smooth, suave, debonair, and all this type of things for a woman to like you, without you being over hyperly sexual. To me, that's a problem. To me, that's you trying to cover up or mask something that you haven't properly dealt with. Or you're just living out a condition that people have told you to be in, on how to deal with the opposite sex or how to deal with people in general. Either from media, from your environment, from your family, however the case may be. That's how people have taught you, or you've been taught to deal with people, so you continue that. But is it right? Nah. Again, here's another one. Over-identification with strength. Again, over-identification with strength. How many times have we gone to the gym, or we see people with a lot of muscle, and they identify being strong, and all this equates to being a man. Now, don't get me wrong. Being a man, being strong does benefit you. But over-identifying, meaning that this is top tier. As a man, you have to be super strong, super buff, all the muscles in the world, da-da-da-da-da. That defines a man, and this is what you pride yourself on. Again, this is what you pride yourself on. Not saying that you can't have it, but this is what you pride yourself on. That's a problem. That's a problem. That's a problem. You walking around like you the biggest badass in the world and you can beat everybody up. That's nothing but hypermasculinity. Again, I'm not saying toxic masculinity, I'm saying hypermasculinity. Here's another one. You have a fear of femininity. Again, a fear of femininity. To me, we're dual. We have masculine traits and we have feminine traits. Certain masculine traits is what's needed. Certain feminine traits is what's needed. It's a balance. You have to have a balance. And the thing with hypermasculine men is there's no balance. You know, in order to be a proper king, you have to have empathy. Empathy comes from your feminine traits, being able to empathize with people and have sympathy with people. And this is what a king needs. A king. A king is a man, right? And when we're saying feminine, we're not saying in your sexuality and who you deal with. I'm saying it's a balance that you have to have. It's the yin and yang. You see what I'm saying? In order to be a man, you have to balance your feminine and your man. And in order for a woman to be a woman, she has to balance her masculinity and what? Her femininity. And that's why we see now in today's culture, just a sidetrack, we see a lot of women who have more masculinity than femininity, and it's unbalanced, right? And we see a lot of men now who's not hypermasculine, who have a lot of femininity traits, or how they deal with themselves and their emotions. They're overly emotional. You know, they don't want to lead. They don't want no family and all these type of things, right? More feminine trait or feminine aspect than the masculine, and it's unbalanced. So back into context of hypermasculinity, right? Boom. They say that being feminine traits, as far as like going within yourself, meditating, empathizing, you know, being cool, being calm, being collected, being slightly passive. They see all these things as weakness. And these are not weaknesses. These are strengths. Like I said, meditating, going within, empathizing. Can't you see how going within and meditating and pausing and waiting could have benefited Rajah Jackson in this situation? Again, don't you see how this could have benefited him? But they say that's weak. Again, they say that's weak. Pausing and waiting and meditating and going inside and empathizing with people, that's weak. So they say it. But it's not. Like I said, a king needs empathy. A king needs sympathy. A king of ruler of nations has to have these things. And how's a king a punk or a sissy or weak? He's not. He's not. You have to have these things as a man. You know, I feel like that's why a lot of people don't like men being leaders now, because they have this whole alpha male role thing that they trying to play, right? And they feel like being an alpha male, everybody has to listen to you, do as you say, you're the leader, da-da-da-da-da. And the downfall of that is you have no empathy. The downfall is that you have no sympathy for others around you. The downfall for that, you can't be soft and gentle when you need to be soft and gentle. You're always hard. You're always this. Can't nobody come to you. Can't nobody talk to you. So it's a brick wall. And when you have that brick wall, people around you are going to start crumbling. People around you can't stand strong. People around you can't come to you and talk to you about certain things. So you feel like you're this alpha male. You feel like you're this top dog. But guess what? On the inside, people don't respect you. People can't really... Your kingdom is not built on a solid foundation. Your kingdom is not built on a solid foundation. So when I apply that concept right there of fear of femininity to this whole Rajah Jackson situation, right? We can see the dynamics playing out with him and his father. That his father is one of those, you know, you can't be soft, you can't be weak, you can't meditate, da-da-da type people. So if Rajah came up under that, where's his outlet for his emotions? Where's his outlet, you know, for him to turn to express how he feels about certain situations, or even how to deal with certain situations? Where is it? He ain't got it. He ain't got it. And lastly, how we numb ourselves instead of feeling. We numb ourselves with alcohol. We numb ourselves with drugs. We numb ourselves with fighting. We numb ourselves with sex. All this to avoid how we really and truly feel about situations. And this is another trait of hypermasculinity. Again, we numb instead of feeling. And feeling is just a natural part of life. You have to feel situations. You have to feel what you're going through. You can't numb it, because when you numb it, you don't become accustomed to it. When you numb it, you just coast on by. And that numbness doesn't allow you to grow. But when you feel things, you understand. And when you understand, you can grow. Excuse me. That's why I feel like a lot of hypermasculine men are suffering from, it just left my mind, arrested development, right? Because they haven't developed certain parts of themselves to deal with the things that come with being a man, a full grown man, not just because you're 18, you're a man. No, a full grown, mature male. They have not developed these things. So that's why I say a lot of hypermasculine men are suffering from arrested development. And like I said, that arrested development blocks you from being able to deal with certain things that comes with being a man. And, you know, it's the man-child syndrome. Now to wrap this up real quick, why is hypermasculinity so dangerous? Again, why is it so dangerous to individuals and to those around them? Number one, mental health. Your mental health will decline. When you suppress emotions, that leads to depression, anxiety, addiction, suicide. Any more we need to say? A shorter lifespan, you know, from certain things. Imagine if Rajah Jackson pulled that on somebody in the street, right? And somebody turned around and just pulled a gun and upped it on him. You know, even after the whole head and apologizing, so he just came and flipped somebody, and somebody just boop and deleted him right there. How about that? You know? Or not just this situation, but in other situations, when we have hypermasculine men taking on situations where they don't have to, or be so aggressive in situations where they don't have to, you think you're the biggest and baddest in the world until you come across somebody who's bigger and badder. And then guess what happens? You know? And how is this dangerous to society? We see it right now. We see it right now. To me, it's like a car with no governor. You know, when you have a man with testosterone and it's not properly channeled, that's dangerous. That's dangerous. You know, you tell this person no, or you tell this person the wrong thing or something that they don't agree with or anything like that. If they're not controlling themselves properly, that's dangerous. It's like a ticking time bomb. That's all it is. It's a ticking time bomb. That's it. It's just a ticking time bomb. And that's dangerous to themselves. That's dangerous to society. This is dangerous to everybody. So, to put the little bow on top, masculinity is not the issue. Being a man is not an issue. Being a strong male is not the issue. Having emotions is not the issue. It's when you don't properly deal with your emotions. When you haven't grown up enough to properly deal with your emotions. That's all it is. Hypermasculinity is equally and closely tied to being emotional. That's it. And if you can watch this whole situation from Rajah Jackson, and you just take a step back and watch it from the beginning to the end, that whole situation, that whole day from the beginning when he got to the place, the wrestling place, to where the guy smacks the can on his head, to where Rajah goes, sit ringside, watching the chat, gets upset, gets emotional. His daddy calls, still emotional. He does what he does in the ring to the guy. Then even afterwards, I'm tired of people calling me this. I'm tired of people calling me that. I'm tired of people calling me this. You see, the whole thing was what? Emotionally fueled. That's it. The whole thing was emotionally fueled. That's it. It was an emotionally fueled situation. Now, everybody's saying Rajah needs to go to prison. He needs to go to prison. It seems like a lot of y'all want to see a man fall. And it seems like that's what a lot of people want. Now, for me, it's hard to say a man needs to go to prison. It's hard for me to say that. Does he need consequences and repercussions for his actions? Yes. Yes. He does need some kind of consequences and repercussions for his actions. Yes. But to say this was attempted murder, no. This was not attempted murder. His mindset was not, I'm going to delete this guy. No, that was not his mindset. Like I said, all this was the tipping point, the boiling point, the straw that broke the camel's back. But this was just a build-up from a whole lot of things, and he had to just release his anger. And sadly, Psycho Stu was at the receiving end of this. That was it. That's all it was. Sadly. So was it intentional for them to say attempted murder? No. No, it's not. But going back to when people saying he needs to go to prison and all this, that's hard for me to say. I think more so than anything, he needs counseling. He needs counseling. He needs counseling. He needs to go sit down with a therapist and really talk about how he feels on the inside, what's going on. And see, like I said, a lot of people gonna say that's feminine. I don't need no counselor. I don't need no this. Okay, all right. Till you really delete somebody, now you're sitting in prison for 40, 50, 60 years because you haven't dealt with your emotions properly. Okay? The prison is full of emotional, excuse me, what I'm about to say. But prison is full of emotional niggas who haven't dealt with their emotions properly, and then somebody step on their shoes or something like that, and then they up the fire and up delete their ass. That's really it. I had to break it down in my language. But that's really what it is. Emotion is full, I'm sorry, prison is full of emotional ass niggas. Like, being real, keeping it real. I'm pretty sure 75% of people that's in prison right now was on some emotional shit. Somebody stepped on their shoe. Somebody was with their girl. Somebody called them a bitch. Somebody called them a hoe ass nigga. Somebody called it. I had to get real with it real quick. Somebody called them something about their name that they didn't like. They got emotional and they dealt with it emotionally instead of saying, I'm gonna let that fly. I'm gonna let that fly. See me, you can call me what you want on any word in the dictionary. You can call me that. Because number one, I don't have no respect for you or reverence for you for that to hold weight with me. You see what I'm saying? That's number one. And number two, you ain't touch me. So you say what you say, okay, you going about your business, that's not affecting my money, going about your business, that's not affecting my livelihood, I'm still be living and popping how I'm living and popping. But when you so emotional and you so caught up and you care about what other people think and what other people feel about you and all this, that don't register in your head. Somebody call you a bitch, you ready to kill them. Somebody call you a hoe ass nigga, you ready to kill them. Somebody call your mama this and that, you ready to kill them. They ain't touch you, they ain't touch them. So why you willing to lose your life and your freedom in society off what somebody has said? Why? 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 For what? For what? It don't make no sense. It don't make no sense. That's what the whole thing is about, is not properly dealing with your emotional ass niggas. That's why when I see a lot of thugs or YNs or whatever the case may be, and they doing their little, you know, walking with they all black on and all that, or whatever the case may be, feeling like they on top of the world or they meanness and baddest, they just emotional. So they neglected. They mama neglected them, they daddy neglected them, somebody ain't loved them enough. They heartbroken. That's all it is. They ain't properly deal with their emotions. But like I said, the worst thing about it is when you don't deal with your emotions properly, you don't deal with things properly, you come across a situation and boom, your freedom in society is gone just like that. So hopefully Raja can learn from the situation. Hopefully it don't take too much away from, like I said, everybody say he need to go to prison and all this and all that. I can't say that much because that'll ruin his whole life. And I feel like he needs to learn from this lesson more so than this lesson taking away all that from him. You know, I deeply feel for Psycho Stu because he was unconscious. A lot of bones, they said, was broken in his face. He lost some teeth. So for that part, yeah, that's a fucked up situation. I'm not gonna hold you. It's a fucked up situation. But like I said, when you really break it down, I'm empathetic, I'm sympathetic, and I'm able to see stuff from an observant view. So I kind of take the emotions out of it and I just really analyze the situation. And I hope even Psycho Stu can see that from an observant point of view, that this is a boy, and like I said, he's in the man body, but this is a boy who's still emotional. This is a boy who's hurt on the inside. This is a young kid who's hurt. And he needs the proper outlet. He needs the proper people to talk to. He needs a counselor. He needs a therapist. He needs a pen and a paper to write down how he truly feels about what's going on the inside. And he needs to be in an environment where it's safe for him to talk about his feelings and emotions and how he feels. He definitely needs that. Raja needs that. He needs that. Because I'm pretty sure he has the abilities to be a great fighter or whatever endeavor he puts his mind to. I'm pretty sure that's there. But him not properly dealing with his emotions, and now we have all this social media, and you can be rage baited just like that. Nah, you need to go to counseling, bro. You need to go to counseling. You need to go get you a therapist and sit down about what's really going on, because this is just emotionally fueled. Again, all this whole situation was emotionally fueled. That's it. That's it. Because that could have been easily turned a blind eye to. You know, a simple mistake. It's not even like the beer can hurt. It's not even like blood was bleeding and, oh my God, I need to go to the hospital. That wasn't even it. That wasn't even the situation. You weren't even, you know. Water break. That wasn't even the situation. It was more of your feelings and your manhood got hurt more than what? more than your head. So that's where that whole thing came from. It wasn't about because you was hurt physically and all this and all that and you wanted your payback. No, you want your payback because everybody was calling you a bitch. Plain and simple. Plain and simple. Whew. But anyways, I'm about to get off. I greatly do appreciate y'all for watching. It's your favorite cousin, Rich. Y'all be safe out there. Deal with your emotions properly, especially black men. Deal with your emotions properly. It's okay to have emotions. It's just how do you deal with them? That's it. Just how do you deal with them? Anyway, this is your favorite cousin, Rich. Y'all be safe out there, all right? Love and blessings.